Welcome to the STR Data Lab.
Welcome back to the STR Data Lab podcast, your go-to source for everything short-term rental data, trends, and insights. I'm Jamie Lane and excited to kick off 2025 with you. As a special thank you for tuning in, we've got a little bonus for you. Get 10% off your AirDNA subscription with this exclusive code, STR Data Lab, all lowercase, one word. Again, that's STR Data Lab, all lowercase, one word. Just head to airdna.co and enter the code at checkout. So let's get started, and here's today's episode. Hello and welcome to the STR Data Lab. I'm Jamie Lane, Chief Economist at AirDNA, and I'm joined today by a really interesting guest, Nikkei Rosenberg, a real estate agent from Savvy Realty. Nikkei, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm super excited to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, so we really wanted to kick off the year with an episode around finding a real estate agent because we all know, like, kick off the year for a lot of people is kicking off investment time because this is and some of the and most and busiest time for people sort of starting their ADA subscription, sort of starting their investment journey. And I think for so many people, as they start looking into markets, that next question is, how do I find an agent in the market I'm looking for after I found that market? So, given your expertise in short-term rentals and in real estate, I thought you'd be an excellent guest. And so maybe let's,
Yeah.
for the listener, and start with some of your background and how did you end up in the short-term rental real estate world?
Oh, good question. So I grew up in St. Augustine, Florida, which is a top vacation destination and has been for decades. And originally from Jacksonville, which is just north of there, that's the big city. And I knew college was not for me. I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't really know what direction that was going to go. And so I graduated high school early. And at 17 years old, really the only jobs in my area were hospitality type of jobs because, we're talking 20 plus years ago. Y'all can guess how old I am now. I answered an ad in a newspaper for a property management position at a vacation rental resort that was about 132 3 bedroom, 2 bath oceanfront condos. They all had a view, they're all individually owned. And this was a top destination for people from like Central Florida. It was the closest beach. So they all had second homes and then they would rent them out when they weren't there. And so I had never had any experience in vacation rentals. Airbnb did not exist at that point, right? We had VRBO and we had direct booking. And I just fell into it because it was a job, right? And I just wanted to get started. And so at 17 years old, I was the assistant manager for the rental program. And we had started with about 10 properties that we were managing. And I worked there for about 5 years. And when I left, we had about 115 of the 132 units. And it was like an in-house HOA ran vacation rental management program. And that gave me like all of the nitty gritty, the down and dirty, the hard operational work, understanding direct booking, guest relations, implementing linen service, hiring and firing vendors, quality management, and evicting people. I mean, it was insane, all the things that I got to learn there, but I'm so grateful for that time because, wow, that gave me a lot is different nowadays in the industry today, but a lot is the same from what I learned, back then. And so that was how I got started in the vacation rental world. Unfortunately, I had some health issues. I left the industry for a little bit. I was pretty stressed. We would run the property all day long. And then in the evening, we would redecorate, redesign, refresh the condos because people, even back then, were like, I want to stay competitive. My neighbor they just remodeled and I want to be more competitive, right? I want mine to look better. So we would just work and work. And so had some health issues, left the industry for a bit. And then back in 2018, Vacasa had headhunted me. I was running a different business. I owned commercial healthy cafes. I had about six at the time, and Vacasa had came and headhunted me, and I really wasn't looking for a job because I had my business. But at that time, I was like, okay, like they're gonna let me continue to have my business. They're gonna let me keep doing what I'm doing, and they want me to come on. I had never heard of them. I didn't really, understand that company at the time, and so I was like, all right, let's do it. You're going to, pay me six figures while I still have my business. All right. Okay. I'll give this a try. So at that time, I was basically doing sales for the property management side of the business. They were still a privately held company. It was a very different model than what everybody knows today. And, I really built the market in Northeast Florida and really the whole Southeast of the United States. And I was with them for about 5 years. And in that time, I launched about 600 short term rentals across the Southeast, with most of that being in the Northeast region of Florida. And along the way, I got my real estate license. What I found was that I was the one closing the deals for the realtors because they didn't understand how to work with short term rental buyers and sellers. At the time, there weren't a lot of sellers, everyone was buying, right? But they didn't understand, I would actually go into the brokerages and teach the brokerage how to work with the buyers and the sellers. And so I just got decided to get my license. I also, back then I was a single mother. I would Airbnb my condo. I now have a couple properties of my own. And I also own a local boutique management company. So that's kind of what's got me here today. Did about 7 million in real estate last year just from short-term rentals, and, built my property management company. So here we are.
That sounds like a a ton of experience,
Yes.
in the space. So going from working on managing and bringing, growing a property management company up to in your area, up to 600 properties. And then and I'm sure your experience through design, renovations, all that, and becomes really important as you're sort of helping investors sort of think through and what a property could and would be as they're sort of finding their investment. So maybe let's move over to the real estate side, and then maybe we'll blend them back together. So when uh, working with Savvy Realty, how did you sort of come into this group? And what do you see that really differentiates Savvy from other real estate agencies?
Oh, good question. So I was essentially doing real estate on my own. I had a lot of brokers trying to recruit me and all that, but I was just like an individual producer because nobody understood me in in the world of real estate because I really only serviced these short-term rental investors, right? And so I didn't want to be on teams. I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to do my thing. You guys work on your residential real estate. I'm going to work on my short term. And I got involved. I found Savvy STR through Bill Fayeth. So I went hard into just learning and investing in myself. And I knew the industry had changed so much. And so I really went out there and was like seeking just learning, for my own investing, goals, but also because I knew that I had such a gap to really fill from how the industry has shifted. And so I got involved with Bill Fayeth and his groups, joined their inner circles. I started going to their conferences, and that's where I started to I met Tyler Coombe, and I started to see like people that had been on his team, and just seeing their success and seeing the community that they had, it really drew me in because I was like, wow, like you guys understand me and I understand you, and we do the same thing. You just do it in other parts of the country. And so, they offered me a spot on the team, which is, I feel like that's such an opportunity because, it's the best of the best. It's the top people in the entire industry, and that's who I want to work with. I want to be able to deliver results to my clients that nobody else can do. And I think that Savvy, that's their main mission, and everything that they do is like excellence, right? It's not just getting a deal done, it's not just having a transaction. It's making that, it's like changing that person's life. It's making an impact in that client's life. And I think that's what sets them apart is that commitment to excellence, that commitment to learning, to ourselves also doing not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, and showing up and doing the things we're telling our clients to do every day, doing that ourselves, right? and everyone on the team owns short-term rental properties. No one on the team is inexperienced from an owner's perspective. And I think, if you've only done real estate from the realtor perspective and you've not done it from the short-term rental owner's perspective, you're missing a really valuable piece and perspective there, of what an owner has to go through after they purchase that property. So, I think that our team, it's the amount of support that we get and the amount of resources that we're able to provide. I was consulting and helping a client set up a property in Houston. I knew no one in Houston. I knew nothing about Houston, but through my team, I was able to get him set up so he can self manage on his own and everything that he needs, and just with the click of a button, the click of a mouse, right? So that is really valuable to have that support and know that you're going to get the best anywhere in the country.
Yeah. And I know that I'm quite a number of savvy agents throughout the country, but and if I'm maybe in an investor or looking to get into investing and looking to find a real estate agent that can be sort of short-term rental specific, and have that experience that you have, how do you suggest they go about finding an agent like that?
Well, I mean, you can definitely go straight to Savvy STR. You can go right to our website, you can go right to our Facebook, and you can reach out to us there. But if you want to do your own research and you don't just want to go find someone right away, you really want to start to learn on your own, I would say Facebook groups are so powerful because you've got this collective of people that are, asking questions, that are providing resources, and they're all there together. So like Bill's group, the Build Short Term Rental Wealth Facebook group. And if you go to like let's say you're trying to find it in a certain state, you want to find it in Florida or you want to find it in Georgia, wherever, whatever state that is, you can go to Facebook groups that are state specific, city specific, and start to see what's happening in those groups, see what the questions are, and understand who the players are in that area. And you'll quickly pick up, if you're just going to those groups and you're paying attention, it doesn't take a lot of time. It's just, once a day checking in for 15 minutes, what's going on in this group. You can see the people that are the most active, what they're saying, how they're showing up. Are they contributing? Are they adding value? Do they have the knowledge that you're seeking? Do they have the experience? You can start to go to those people's profiles, check out what they're doing. They're going to tell you what they do in those groups. They're going to tell you how they service, right? So I think that the Facebook groups are so powerful on a local, state, and also national level. Obviously going to like the Build Short Term Rental Wealth group, that's like a really an international group of people. So they're all over, and that's really more like the business of short term rental. But those local groups are really, really valuable for finding information. And there are some other like Bigger Pockets has abilities to get connected with short term rentals. Also, STR Insights, Kenny Bedwell, like his group, they connect you with short term rental agents. So I mean, there's a lot of services now in the industry that will actually connect you to who you're looking for.
Yeah, when I was looking to get my investment going this last year, reached out to some friends that were had invested in the market area I was looking at, and they suggested an agent. And it was just so nice to get someone that had 4 short-term rentals already in the market. What he was the mayor of the city,
Oh
so
wow.
knew all the regulations, was able to talk me through sort of chatter on future regulations, and then hook me up with and all the people I needed to know in the city to like, here's the AC guy, here's the maintenance guy, here's 10 people that could potentially be your cleaner that you can start interviewing. Like, and knowing that you not only want one, but you need multiple because not, the cleaners aren't always going to be available when you need to do a 1 day turnover.
Yeah. So two points there that you brought up. The first one is regulation, and the second one is that network, right? So regulation being one of the, I would say, the biggest threats to the short-term rental industry. When you buy a short-term rental property, you assume, okay, I have property owner rights. I can rent my house as a short-term rental, and it's really heavily dependent on city, county, state. What is happening in that area, and I have been blessed because I just grew up in a community where in Florida, we don't have state taxes. We have tourism tax. And that saves the people that live here because we don't pay all those additional taxes because the tourists coming into our state fund our state. And so our state is extremely pro vacation rentals in most areas. Now there's some little pockets where it's heavily residential, and it's very established where they don't want vacation rentals coming in. But for a lot of the state, they really want them. But that's not the case, especially in highly regulated places like California and New York and those places. It definitely can be challenging. So having someone who understands the regulations, and that's one of the biggest questions you've got to ask a realtor. You've got to really do due diligence if you're trying to find someone that's going to help you. If they can't tell you exactly where you can buy and exactly where you cannot buy for short-term rental, they're not someone you want to work with. Because if someone asks me, hey, I want to buy in St. Augustine, or I want to buy in Daytona, or I want to buy in Jacksonville, I can tell you exactly where. Okay, here's the map. Here's where you can go. Here's where you can't go. And you can go here maybe with a little more regulation, right? So, and then also not even what the current regulations are, but what are the coming regulations? Because like the city that I invested in Palm Coast, it was a $5 yearly permit, no restrictions, okay? But now they've already passed one vote to change it to it's going to be a $400 a year permit, and there's going to be some occupancy limits, some parking requirements, some noise ordinance stuff, some basic stuff to keep things safe and healthy for the town. But they are, now the city wants to make their money on the short-term rentals. So, I know that that's coming down the pipeline. It's not going to stop us from doing short-term rentals here, but we just have to know, hey, we got to follow these new regulations probably. And they're not law yet, but they're probably going to be law. So definitely having someone who knows the regulations like the back of their hand and is on the pulse of that is critical, because you don't want it's like this is like launching an entire business. Each short-term rental is really its own business, and you don't want to launch a business that legally you can't even run, right? That's not really sustainable. So that's the first part of the regulation. And then what you said about the network is critical too, because again, it's like you don't technically have employees, but you do because you're managing all the vendors that are servicing your property, your pool cleaner, your landscaper, the pest control, the cleaners, the handyman. All those people are needed. And at least in Florida, because I would say a lot of people are on kind of like island time, it can be hard to find really good, solid people who do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it for the price that they quoted you, right? So having that team and that network is really important. So thank you for sharing those points that I can expound on a little bit.
Yeah. So let's say you are talking with a real estate agent. You said regulate and asking a question around regulation could be a huge red flag if they do not sort of know the STR specific regulations. Are there any other questions that you would suggest someone asking a real estate agent that is sort of like that litmus test of like, do they have a competent answer that would let me know whether this is someone would want to work with or not?
Well, you being the numbers king, I would say, is numbers. Just like if you were to sell your home or want to sell your home, you would meet with multiple agents and you would get, a CMA, a competitive market analysis for your property to understand what the comps sold at so that you could sell your home, for the highest and best price. You would also do the same when it comes to your finding a short-term rental property. And you know, running a pro forma is different than an income projection. An income projection is just, oh, this property will do between 75 and 100,000, right? And then a pro forma is when you're looking at the expenses, the operating expenses, versus your income, and what type of returns are you going to see on that investment. And if your realtor can't break that down for you and explain it to you, and give you like a good, better, and best scenario based on how you set that property up. There's a lot. I think one of the biggest things that has happened in the industry is it's so complex now when it comes to determining how much revenue a property can generate. And goodness for AirDNA and the work that you and your team are doing because it's critical to my daily workflow. Like I can't help my clients without that data. And so if they can't provide you, number one, a good, better, and best performer that actually helps you understand what your expenses and what your income's going to be, plus the comps, the supporting properties that are doing those numbers, right? Then they don't know what they're doing because that is what I do all day, every day. All day, every day, I am creating performance for my clients. I'm running the numbers. And the thing is my clients don't understand if they're not savvy to short term rental, they don't understand what the expenses are. They don't understand that they're going to have to carry the Wi-Fi and the landscaping and the pool cleaner, and that the electric and the water is probably going to be more expensive than your own home. And, they don't understand all those little inner workings, right? And, they don't understand that they're going to have to replace linens once a year, right? So calculating and deep cleans and like all the things that come up that are expenses to run a property. So every client, I am diving into those numbers so that they can actually get an understanding of like, hey, you need to know to expect all these expenses, but here's the results you're going to get if you set it up like this. So that's the other part of it is how you set up the property is going to determine exactly how much revenue you're going to make. And sometimes it's a little hard to determine what that revenue is, but there are things that you can do that are going to move that revenue up, right? And there's many ways to launch a business and promote and market a business. And, just because, think about a hair salon launches and opens, but one hair salon that is down the street from another could be way more profitable because this one's, not marketing or not set up well or not a great experience for their customers or they don't follow up or, there's so many different factors there. So a short-term rental is exactly the same. You've got to go into it as it's a business and how I set it up and the experiences that my guests are going to have there are going to determine how much revenue I make, how you manage it. So, having that conversation and setting expectations, because I think what I saw like in 2018 and then through the COVID boom is people would buy properties and then set them up with like, you know, secondhand furniture and just, very like like the bare minimum, a bed in the room and no decor and like, and it's like that doesn't work. If you're trying to don't do short-term rental unless you're going to do it right. I mean, that's my advice. Like if you're not going to spend the money that it takes to set up a property so that someone can go there and be like, "Wow, this is a great property. I want to come back here," then I would say don't do it. So someone who can explain all of that and set expectations for you, if they can't do that, then they're probably not that experienced.
No, that's all great points. Looking specifically at the North Florida market, maybe tapping into some of your expertise now and sort of living, operating, and building businesses in that market. And we've seen some of the and slowest growth in supply over the past year that we've really seen in like a decade. We've talked about regulation. And there's obviously been some weakening of performance lately. There's been multiple hurricanes. There's been maybe increase in insurance costs. What do you sort of attribute the slowing supply growth to? And then what is your sort of outlook as you're talking with investors on how you see the market sort of evolving going forward?
Good question. So, last year was great for me. I mean, I launched many properties last year and it's still very, very strong. And I would say what you hear in the media and what is actually happening isn't always the true perspective, right? And again, just like I talked about, how you manage your property is it's so much it's just one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle as to how your property is going to perform. And so we have taken a creative approach to a lot of our properties. If any of them were not performing, we did a refresh. So for example, one of our properties, it was just a house not near downtown St. Augustine. It was just in St. Augustine, a little bit kind of out of off the beaten path, but still close to everything. A 3-2, nothing spectacular about it. I did have a pool. What we did was we went in and we created a whole dog themed home. You know, everything surrounds the dogs. The dogs can swim in the pool. We made that a rule. We allowed up to 4 dogs. We did all the things like little treats and decor and like all the things that would attract a dog loving family to come to that property, and it has crushed it. Right, it's outperformed some of my other properties that are like closer to town, and it's because they put that extra touch on it that we know that, hey, this is a perfect property for families that travel with dogs. We're going to market to that. And so, rebranding, refreshing the properties has definitely helped. I will say when it comes to like the supply growth slowing, the interest rates being higher has held a lot of people back because the numbers just aren't as attractive. And people were still in the mindset of those low interest loans that they were getting, a couple years ago, and seeing the twinkle of like, oh wow, like this is great, short term rental, I can make so much money. And you can make great money, but you got to be willing to put in the work and the time, the energy, the money, the resources at the beginning to make it work, because it is highly competitive. And there are people out here, me and my whole team and all my clients I service, like this is what we do. We are every day looking for new deals and going to make them properties that are at the top, that are performing at the top. And so you gotta, you know, set yourself apart somehow and make it a property that when people are looking at it online, they're like, wow, I really want to book this. So the interest rates have definitely held people back. But I've always been one of thinking like when other people are pulling back, that's when you should be really leaning in and seeing like, okay, like this is an opportunity zone for me, because now homes have just been sitting on the market for a long time, and sellers are eager to move those properties. And it's actually a prime time, I think, for people to go and get into short term rentals. I've been able to negotiate massive amounts of seller credits. We're talking like 150,000 dollars seller credits on properties. Get them sold to us fully furnished when they weren't like even a short term rental previously, but we're like, wow, this would work well for short term rental. Let's see if they'll throw that in, right? Get that thrown in on the deal, and so there's so much opportunity right now because people have pulled back a lot. They're nervous, they're scared, they're listening to the media that's like, oh, don't buy real estate, interest rates are high, right? But I think there's actually a really cool opportunity here for anyone wanting to get into short term rental, because let's say you buy today at 7% interest rates, which I know rates have crept up a little bit right now, you know, and Florida is still booming. There is still growth. The prices are still going up. Some areas, the prices have come down slightly, but I don't even think that it's really the value has come down. It's that people were overlisting their property for a higher price than what they were trying to get. And then now it's just kind of leveling out to like what it should actually be priced. So I don't think that the home values have really gone down. It's just that people were still trying to capitalize on when the market was really high. And it's more of a true value now. So let's say you buy at 7% now, okay? And then, in a couple of years, interest rates go down and now you've built some equity. You can do a cash out refi. You can refi that property, take that equity out, and then, lock yourself in at a lower interest rate. I think that this is a really good opportunity right now for someone to do a play like that. So you asked me about the supply growth insurance. Let's talk about insurance. So insurance is actually not that bad. As long as you're not buying in a flood zone, it's not terrible. Now I'm on the East Coast. I'm talking about East Coast of Florida. West Coast has been hit really hard by the hurricane, so it is going to be more expensive on the West Coast. But on the East Coast, we are cold water in the Atlantic, so we don't really get direct hits of hurricanes. So over here, it's actually pretty affordable. I doing a deal right now. It's like a 4 bedroom pool home. We got quotes. It's like 3,700. So not that it is an older home too. It'd probably be a lot less if it was a newer home. So I mean, it's not terrible, and you just got to make sure you're not buying something in a flood zone, which I really just don't recommend in general. But if you're like on the beachfront, it may be worth it to you. But and we talked about insurance, talked about supply growth. The other thing I see is a lot of people who bought at the peak, they over leverage themselves, then they don't know how to run the short term rentals the best, they're not maximizing their revenue, because I think, like I said, a lot of people just kind of cheaped out or just didn't know when it came to the setup and the design. So now they're over leveraged, they overpaid, and now they're like, wow, this just isn't, the numbers aren't working for me. I need to dump this property, I need to sell it. So I see some of that happening as well. And yeah, so but overall, I think that there's some pockets of at least Florida that are doing really good, and there's still a lot of deals to be had.
Yeah, and so it sounds like some of the sort of concerns around there aren't, and all concerns, and maybe opportunity of, and if people sort of get scared that and they hear like, oh, I shouldn't be looking at Florida now, or I shouldn't be looking at Texas now because insurance rates are high. There are parts of the state that are not really impacted by those and really increasing insurance rates. There's still, and as you're sort of saying, like a lot of opportunity to get properties that have been sitting for a bit, and maybe they not ideal for single family residences, but could be great opportunity as a short-term rental investment, if you're able to come in. And the current interest rate isn't necessarily the interest rate you'll be having forever. And there could be an opportunity to refinance down the road, and get it in at a lower interest rate, lower your monthly payment, pull out some equity down the line. And that was a lot of the sort of mindset I had going into my investment. The property had been sitting for over a year. The seller was willing to make some pretty big concessions to sell it, and for me, it checked every box I was looking for in terms of what I was looking to buy, and the numbers sort of made sense. And I think we'll look back, even though this is one of the and weakest time periods in terms of overall investability of like where revenues are, where interest rates are, where home values are, there's still lots of specific opportunities where if you really dig into the numbers, that you can make it work. You can tell the right story, and that you look back and hopefully look back and say that I'm really glad I was buying at a time when a lot of people weren't.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, it sounds like you have the exact same situation, so and if you're looking for like a 10 to 15% return, I would say there's plenty of those deals out there. Some short-term rental investors want 20%, to make it worth their time, which I understand if like that's what they do. Those deals are definitely harder to find. And it's not that they're necessarily harder to find, it's harder to achieve that because again, there is more setup and work that goes into making it a high performing property. You've got to know how to squeak out every little extra dollar of an average daily rate and occupancy that you can get. And that just takes skills. And if you're new, it's hard to know those things. You just don't know what you don't know, right? So anyone looking for a 10%, 12%, 15% return, you can definitely find those. And, my company, we share those out every single day, to people looking to buy. So, and some of my clients, honestly, there are still a lot of clients who want just a lifestyle asset. They want a home that they can use as their second home. And they really just want it's not so much about the cash flow and like how much can I get out of it. It's about, I just want it to pay for itself and maybe put a little in my pocket and be building my portfolio, start there and, take some of the tax advantages, and, if it only makes me 7 or 8%, I'm totally happy with that. So everyone kind of has a different goal of what they're looking to achieve. And I've got some clients who I've been looking for 6 months for a property for them because they, no matter what, like it's got to produce 20%. Right. So it just depends on each person's specific goals, what they need to do. Some of my clients are very highly paid, doctors, CEOs, attorneys, and they just need a place to put cash, right? And they're like, okay, I need this. I don't even need it to make a lot of money. I just need to be able to have some tax shelter. So everyone's a little different.
Yep. Getting towards the end of the interview, and we've talked about and the competitive environment today, and even back in 2008, 2009, and people were highly competitive with their neighbors. I think we've all seen how competitive the market has gotten in terms of out amenitizing, out competing your competition and sort of finding the best properties and like, all right, I'm going to go and outdo them. Do you feel like this is sustainable? Do you, and when you see the amount of sort of money people are putting into properties, sort of cash up front, and how are you seeing that impact on the ability to generate a return? And then 2, like, or is it like, and the only way that you can get a return now is by doing that, and yeah, it's a little bit less, but like that this is the base that you've got to be operating at to be competitive in this market.
I think it's market specific. Like if you're going into Asheville, the Smokies, Nashville, St. Augustine, like Poconos, like top areas for vacation rentals. Yeah, there's a lot more competition, but there are so many little hidden pockets where, like for example, one of my properties that I invested in was a pool home in Palm Coast. There's nobody there doing it like great. They're just doing it mediocre. Like they've got these outdated looking, it's like a old school market, and no one's like really taking advantage of that, making it competitive. So you've got to just know each market individually and know if you want to go into Nashville, yeah, you better be ready to drop money, right? But
Yeah.
but there's tons of areas where you don't have to go crazy. You could spend on a 3 or 4 bedroom 50,000 or 40,000 in setup. And, some people are spending 200,000 on setup, 250, 300 on setup. I'm not talking those numbers. I'm talking, 30 to 50,000. And, like in Florida, the outdoor is really important. You make your outdoor, an oasis, and, you've got a good setup for that kind of investment. Right. So it is specific to each market. I do think it's sustainable because only the top 1% of people are going to do that. Most people are not. And I've actually, when I have clients who I'm like, I really don't know if short term rental is a good fit for you because you're not willing to put in to it what it's going to take to make it successful, and I don't feel right representing you if you're not going to take what I'm sharing and take it seriously, right? And actually do it. If you're going to buy this property and then cheap out, it's going to fail. So I will kill a deal, and because I don't want to feel, because I know what's going to happen. They're going to buy it, and I can already tell you're not going to put into it what it's going to take. Even I'm talking like one of them recently, I was like, listen, you got to spend like 15, 20K on this. That's not a lot. Right. And they were very hesitant. I was like, okay, then don't do it. Don't do it because it's not going to work, and you're going to be hurting down the line. So yeah, I do think it's sustainable because I know with the amount of people I work with, it's like, let me not say top 1%. It's that 80-20 rule. 20% of people at the top are going to do it, 80% of people are not. Right. So I do think it's sustainable, and there's so many markets. I mean, there's just so much areas, and the trends change. Remember when Gatlinburg and like Florida were crazy during COVID, and like you just did your webinar about, with the new administration and how people have been, traveling overseas a lot, right? Like a lot of trends change. Remember when Tulum was blowing up, and like, I mean, everything, the trends change over time, and so there'll always be a new opportunity.
Yep. No, I tend to agree that, and maybe in the bubble that many of the investors look at, it's like, "Oh, everyone's doing this." And then you look out across the universe of short-term rentals, it's like maybe only the top 10, 15% are actually doing it, and those are the ones that you wanna be comping yourself against. But then you really see how they're outperforming the rest of the market, and that's why it's really important to be looking at the rest of the market and sort of looking at the percentiles of like, "Oh, hey, this is top 75th or 90th percentile. This is where I wanna be." But then the bottom of the 50th percentile, like, this is what they're doing, and if I don't put this effort into it, thinking about your good, better, best, or maybe there's the and even below that of like, if I just sort of mail it in, this is what
Yeah.
it's gonna be, and that's
Yes.
very apparent if you and sort of dig into the data of, uh, what it could be, and then and also what it might be if you don't put that extra effort into it.
Yeah. And listen, there's nothing wrong with mailing it in, but just don't expect to get 10, 20% returns if you're gonna mail it in, right? So
Yeah. Well, Nikki, this has been so much fun chatting today. Anything else you want to sort of share with the audience? Any and sort of spots to find you, and any sort of last words?
yeah, so I am always open. My door is always open. I'm never too busy. I try to balance myself. If anyone just wants to have a conversation, I think a lot of people are afraid to waste my time. And, I would say that a new connection, a new relationship is not a waste of time. If let me caveat with if you're putting in that effort to learn yourself and you're investing in your own self, you're not just coming to me to pick my brain, right? Like you're wanting to have an insightful conversation about your personal situation and where you want to go. I'm always open to that. I am on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram's Invest with Nikki, Nikkei. My name's spelled a little different. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I'm on all the things, and be happy to connect with you guys. I'm very active on my social medias and always sharing content. So if you want to follow, I'm always putting out tips and tricks and education and deals too. So if you're looking for deals in Florida, I'm always sharing those. And the last thing I would say is, if you have the desire to invest and that there's got to be a better way than just working for the man or running your business and constantly feeling like you've got to make that money, and you know that there's like a better way. There is. And don't be afraid to do it, and even if you fail, guess what? You learned how not to do it, right? And that's how we grow. And so just if that desire's in your heart, like it's there for a reason. You got that vision for a reason. So, don't let that die. Go for it and, make it happen.
Awesome. Well, Nikki, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Jamie. Have an amazing day.
You too.